All right, in a room here today with George Cherchian of James Chase. What is the origin of James Chase, the name?
Thanks for having me, David. Really happy to be here with you.
Yeah.
So James Chase is my buyer's agency business, and it's named after my two sons, so Hunter James and Jordan Chase.
Yeah, fantastic. And when it comes to buyer's agency, do you specialize in anything, or talk to me a little bit more about your business and specialties?
Yeah, for sure. So we're a boutique agency, I guess, to start with. So we support clients along the eastern seaboard, and we're able to sort of work with people who want to upgrade their principal place of residence, as well as invest in residential and commercial going forward as well.
Who are your most exciting clients?
To be honest, everyone's quite different. And we get a good, mix of clients from a profession perspective. But the ones that are most satisfying are the owner-occupier clients, because they're often running through final inspections with their kids, calling dibs on bedrooms, really owning the space, and there's something really rewarding about seeing that.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that because I know that a lot of buyers agents don't like purchasing owner-occupied properties. Why is that the flip side for you?
So it's the human element. So the reason I got into what I got into is to help people, right? So whether it's sort of financially or, as simply as a roof over their head. So a lot of people struggle with that, given sort of the age we live in, dual household incomes, rising and growing families. And weekends are committed with sport, they're time poor and often missing out because we're buying into competitive markets. Yeah. So to be able to sort of help them finally sort of break through is quite rewarding.
I remember that you had your broker, a background as a broker as well. Does that help in any way when it comes to crunching numbers or... It
does help. It does help. I'm obviously sort of not practicing in that space, but just understanding sort of how to sort of structure things. And I'm still a little bit familiar, and I've got my finger on the pulse with some lender policies. Yeah. So it certainly does help structure things. Absolutely.
Okay. On the flip side then, who are the clients that you don't want to work with?
Oh, good question. So, look, to be honest, we work with everyone, right? So we don't necessarily sort of exclude everyone. I think the way the markets are going, especially sort of, nationally, price points are rising, right? So it's becoming more and more challenging finding investment-grade assets at the lower end of the budget, right? So if there's a more modest budget, the 500, 600K, in terms of our own due diligence internally, it's quite sort of difficult to find assets that, pass the litmus test. Yeah. So that's a bit more challenging. But again, we work with them and it's a good chunk of our client base.
What's your view on the market currently?
So where we currently stand, I think there are markets within markets, and that probably isn't going to come as a bit of a surprise. So in terms of a lot of the regional markets, they're quite sort of heated, quite competitive. So things like when we're doing building and pest, conditions and assessments, those timeframes are blowing out to 14 days, and in some cases even higher, right? So those regional markets at the lower price points are quite heated. I'm also sort of conscious of sort of hotspot type investing as well, because we want to make sure that anything that we go into from a demand perspective is driven by organic demand and not artificially inflated.
What do you mean artificially inflated?
So you've obviously got sort of the rise in the prominence of buyers agents who, do what I do.
Okay.
And, as sort of consumers, we all listen to podcasts, we download white papers, and we're educating ourselves based on materials businesses are putting out. So if there's a particular business who's concentrated in a handful of suburbs and they're bringing in, dozens and dozens of investors a month, then that would naturally have a bit of a knock-on effect into that market. So that's something I'm very conscious of. So the approach that we take isn't necessarily a specific market, but it's more the right fit for the client we're working with.
Yeah. When it comes to buyer's agency, compared to 10 years ago, I remember purchasing my first investment property that was through a buyer's agent as well. So I am a big advocate for buyer's agencies. But it was practically unknown 10 to 15 years ago. And now it's booming. Everyone's using buyer's agents now. Does that play a big role in the market direction in Australia, do you reckon?
So I think it's certainly becoming more prominent, you're right. And even when we're dealing with sort of sales agents, like I say, our counterpart, there's a acknowledgement of what the buyer's agents are bringing to the table. Yeah. But so to your point, I think it's fairly the barrier of entry is sort of quite low.
Yeah.
And unless you're sort of well versed as an investor or you've come from a real estate sort of background, one way or another, whether it's sort of residential or commercial, what have you, I think it could be sort of quite challenging. So again, sort of the litmus test is what value can you bring to your clients, and also sort of make the right purchases for them.
Yeah. So now the question is, I've dealt with good buyer's agents and bad buyer's agents. Yeah. How do you pick them out?
So I guess, good and bad's quite sort of relative, right? So it depends on sort of what you value in the buyer's agent offering. So typically, if we're talking sort of costs and, your network connections, I guess. So the thing that most people value is your ability to sort of source pre-market and off-market properties.
Okay. Yep. Let me ask the same question a different way then.
Sure.
What should the clients ask when they're approaching buyer's agents to determine which buyer's agents they're going to work with?
So firstly, I guess it'd be good for clients to get a bit of a handle on the level of experience that a buyer's agent has and the types of clients that they work with. So if there's a particular agency who's buying in, let's say, WA, for example, because that's where sort of the market's percolating and it has been doing for quite some time, if I have no interest in that, but the conversation you're steering me towards that particular market that's not aligned to me, then that's a bit of a red flag because it kind of tells you that they're only buying in that one area and they're trying to sort of get you to fit the mold. The other, I guess, element is what is my experience going to look like from a journey perspective. So again, if you're seeing my face all over sort of Instagram or YouTube or what have you, and you subconsciously consume my content and you get to know me, then you inquire, right? But are you going to get me or are you going to get sort of someone in my team? And there's no right or wrong, but it's just managing that expectation. And that journey. So through that sort of client life cycle, what does that look like? Am I going to be dealing with 3 to 6 people in your team, or am I going to be allocated one person like a relationship manager who will cover everything from start to finish? And it's good for clients to know what that looks like at the outset, so that way you're not in for any surprises.
So it's all about managing expectations.
100%. And different people value different things, right? So a lot of the time we're a boutique business. People value the fact that, they might get me from start to finish. And I think there's something sort of special about that.
Yeah. Do you do everything on your own? Like, do you do your property researches, everything?
So we've got, there's another buyer's agent who's sort of come on board in the business who works with me, supports some of the acquisition, but essentially sort of everything from start to finish, because we do have quite a high standard and we don't necessarily sort of purchase everything that comes our way. So if there's something that I would not buy, I don't want clients sort of looking at that asset and considering it as well. So I, at the moment, do everything from start to finish myself.
Okay, then for novice property buyers or property investors who have never used a buyer's agent before and they're curious how buyer's agents work, could you sum it up for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, a good way of putting it is a buyer's agent acts as your property sort of concierge or your property professional in your corner.
Yep.
So the full service should be really end to end, where sort of you're looking at sort of the research, the due diligence, the risk management, negotiation, and then some of the ancillary things at the end, such as appointing a property manager and sort of help with sort of insurances. Obviously, we're not experts in the insurance space, but there's a checklist that we can work through and help make sure that all of your boxes are ticked.
Yeah. So I could go to domain.com.au or realestate.com.au. Why should I use you?
Very good question, right? And it's something I'm asked daily. So basically, a buyer's agent negotiates for a living. So, we buy property for a living. So whereas as a novice investor or a sort of part-time investor, you might sort of make a purchase once every 12, 18, 24 months, whereas sort of we're negotiating up to dozens of deals a month. Also, our ability to prevent you from buying the wrong type of asset, right? So you might look at a property and go, look, this looks fantastic. It ticks all the boxes. It's densely populated around it. But have you done your environmental checks and hazards? But also, if you come up with a red flag, you need to query it. So for us, a red flag doesn't mean the end of something. So we're able to give it that additional layer of due diligence. It's that sort of making sure you buy the right asset, because ultimately you don't want to be one and done. You want it to be part of your growth journey, your wealth creation journey.
So in short, you're saving clients from emotional purchases.
That's a good way of putting it, absolutely. Because again, for us, like whether we're sort of at the very beginning of the due diligence or we're on the home stretch and we're thinking, we're going to be putting forward an offer on something, if something comes up at that very last minute, we have no issues about, pumping the brakes and walking away, because that's doing right by the client. It's doing right by the purchaser.
Yeah. And how long does it normally take for you to find a suitable property for a client versus on average, versus if they were to go out on their own?
So it very much sort of depends. But to give you an idea, over the last few weeks, we've worked with clients who we've onboarded sort of very quickly. And by the end of that first week, we were able to sort of find a property for them through a pre-market opportunity. But then there are other cases, especially in sort of competitive markets where the quality of stock, for lack of a better term, is not there or just not coming to market for whatever reason, then those times might blow out a little bit longer. The longest it's ever taken has been sort of about 4 months.
4 months?
For complete transparency, yep.
Wow, okay.
But that's an anomaly. So typically it would be, between sort of the 8 to 12 week mark.
Okay. For that 4 months deal, what caused the delays?
So firstly, the type of investment grade assets that were coming to market were quite sort of limited in that particular market. And the market was going through a bit of a state of flux as well in the area we were looking at. So it's sort of regional Queensland, sort of Rockhampton to be specific. And price points were moving while we were actively buying in that market. So, there's a level of care, I guess, we need to provide to ensure we're not overpaying, because ultimately, again, to your point earlier, the client can just go and sort of throw out the highest price. It's not about the highest price. It's about structuring a deal that aligns to their goal and objectives.
So basically, because you're hunting a unicorn.
And sometimes it does feel that way, David.
I wanted to talk to you about how you got started. I've got here in my notes that you purchased your first property at 19.
Yes.
Talk to me more about it. How?
So for me, I always saw property as sort of slaying the biggest dragon, right? So my parents immigrated here from another country, like most of our generation, and we sort of moved around a lot. So my dad had a job for life, and every time his employer moved from one factory to another, we would relocate. So, so for me, maybe subconsciously, that was a sense of frustration. So I wanted to sort of, I saw that as sort of, the big dragon to slay, and I wanted to get it out of the way early. So I basically sort of, clawed and sort of scratched my way through, pulling together a deposit. And entered the market while friends were out sort of traveling overseas. Not to say it's a bad thing, but I just wanted to do it a bit different.
What was the first property that you purchased? So
I purchased a 2-bedroom unit in the suburb of Ryde on Blaxland Road.
Do you still have it?
I don't still have it, no. No.
Do you regret selling it?
The circumstances under which we sold it were quite sort of challenging, I think, and a bit tough to swallow at that time. But it was a good learning point, the whole thing, right? The buying, the purchasing. We bought something that had sort of the vermiculite ceiling, the popcorn ceiling. It had sort of an old orange kitchen bench top, carpets that were originally white at a point in time, but they were now dark beige or brown. So we went through and sort of renovated that to make it something we were happy to live in eventually. It was first tenanted, and then before we moved in, we renovated it, basically gutted the whole thing. So that was a good experience to learn how to sort of do things yourself in some parts, where to pull in the experts, and then eventually sort of when we sold it for close to twice what we paid.
You've always been very interested in properties, even since you were very young.
Yeah.
What made you realize that this is my passion, this is what I wanted to do for life?
Yeah, good question. I understand that, and I get it. Like, so to me, in terms of whether it's the physical sort of structure, I guess, or whether from how to add value to a property and sort of extract, whether it's create growth, extract more equity, that sort of stuff tends to. I really get it, and I'm able to sort of structure it quite well. And it's not just sort of the residential space. I guess, prior to sort of starting my buyer's agency, I've had 25 years in the corporate real estate CRE space.
Yeah.
And I kind of fell into that, right? I started off sort of wanting to do accounting, and then I pivoted. Being a young guy at that point, I would get given opportunities by leaders in the business or the businesses I worked in. And, you don't say no, because with every opportunity comes a bit of more money. And being sort of young and in my early 20s at that point, you take both opportunities. You take opportunities like that with both hands, and you grab them. So eventually I pivoted from, like finance to IT, and then ended up in sort of the property space where I stayed for my whole corporate career.
Yeah, and that's your happy place.
Oh, it's good. I get it. You don't get too many sort of desk jobs where you get something different, right, every day. It's not sort of monotonous. It's not repetitive. And again, that sort of client engagement piece sort of really comes in once you get to the senior levels. So it's a good skill set to have.
But before this business, you mentioned that you've done a few businesses as well. Was that? Talk to me about the experiences.
Yeah, so running a business isn't easy, right? And I guess it's not necessarily for everyone because it can get sort of quite testing at times, and you have your peaks and troughs, and you need proper planning, of course. So very early on, and speaking of that sort of apartment that we had invested in and other sort of properties, we started a business sort of outside the property space in our early 20s, and that didn't go too well. So ultimately, we ended up sort of shutting up shop, and we took a significant sort of hit financially. So a lot of what we had achieved in our early 20s was essentially sort of eroded away as a result of this poor decision. So a very sort of stressful period, but also, in retrospect, several years later, very big learning curve as well. And, now sort of that a significant amount of time has passed, I sort of look at that and I go, you know what, it's something good to have gone through, as unfortunate as it was, because, you're able to sort of rebuild, and it teaches you sort of lessons as a human being too, right? So it teaches you sort of grit and resilience. So you might get knocked down. Being knocked down in your early 20s is very sort of difficult, but what's even harder is if you don't get back up, right? So you need to be able to take those hits and keep going.
I would be really grateful if I got knocked down when I was in my early 20s, rather than late in my 50s or something. You know what I mean? So you learn your lessons very early on, and you rebuild from there. But if you were to pinpoint one thing, I don't want to call it a failure. I want to call it a lesson. What failed the business, basically, if you could talk about it?
Without going into too much detail, I'll probably say I'll own that failure. And the reason for that is, I guess, as a leader or even as a founder of a business, your business is only as successful as the people around you and the caliber of people that you pull in. And I think there's a bit of a skill in being able to sort of determine the strengths and attributes of people that you attract to your team or you bring into your team. And I probably was not doing that as well as I should have in my early 20s. Okay. So that's definitely sort of one of the bigger takeaways and a skill to be able to sort of, I guess, without any emotion, assess a capability of someone and whether they can add value or take it away.
Fantastic. I wanted to read your quote.
Here we go.
You like taking people on a journey and unveiling possibilities, helping them achieve things they thought wasn't possible. Could you elaborate more on that? Because that is, when it comes to buying and selling properties, yes. Especially in this finance world, that's very rare.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, especially sort of the climate we're living in now, things are expensive, right? There's obviously sort of a lot of hardship and what have you. Property prices are more expensive today than what they were 12, 24, 36 months ago, let alone 10 years ago or when the previous generation was buying things. Unfortunately, it's going to keep going. In my view, I think things will get more and more expensive. Property will get more and more expensive. But I think, you can sort of look at things and go, I'm never going to get in. Or you could look at things and go, how can I position myself to get in? Now, an example I can give you is I was sort of sitting with someone a little while back, and this sort of thing sort of happens every now and then. You come across people who sort of go, well, I've got a place, I've got a little bit of a mortgage on it for, I guess different reasons. I had to sort of sell it at a point in time. Mm-hmm. Now, he sort of went, well, if I sell it, I'm going to walk away with $1 million. Where else am I going to buy in, these surrounding suburbs for $1 million? So very sort of, I don't want to say defeatist attitude, but the reality of it is, $1 million doesn't go very far, unfortunately, these days, especially sort of in Sydney, right? So the person was feeling quite stuck. So for me, I kind of looked at that and I went, well, let's sort of treat it differently. So, have you want to live in this suburb or the surrounding suburbs, you really like this, have you considered renting? So have you considered rent vesting as a strategy? And again, it's not for everyone, but if you're really sort of attracted to that place and you can't afford to buy, then maybe you can sort of rent in that area and then use your $1 million capital base to acquire 2 or 3 assets in lower price points, provided you could borrow it. We then sort of took that person on a journey, obviously not through my business itself, because we're not qualified financial advisors, but a financial advisor looked at their position as well and sort of said, well, if real estate is your preferred asset class to that individual, then you realize by making a few simple changes and contributions, you could bump up your self-managed super fund, your just on the cusp of being able to buy something in your superannuation. They took out the right advice, and for them, it was a right move. So going from, where am I going to buy something for $1 million to very quickly having a portfolio of 3 to 4 properties down the barrel. It's quite different, right? So for me, I like the fact that I was able to sort of show that person, well, you actually do have options. You can still, grow your wealth and accumulate your wealth and secure your property. And sure, if it's sort of that PPOR that you're chasing, it might come a little bit later in life, but there are options. And if I can open some of those doors to people, it becomes a rewarding experience for me too.
What would your advice be for our younger generations who are looking to get started? Because looking at it now, you started buying your first property when you were 19. I don't think that is possible for the majority of us without the help of the banks of mum and dad.
Of course. So it is quite hard. I think a lot of it would come down to, even if you get that help or not, I think it's about being able to identify the entry point that's right for you, right? So as you've pointed out, there's the bank of mum and dad who help some people, but others, and maybe a majority, don't have that help. So it's good to sort of try and understand where is that entry point into the market that's right for you. There's a lot of information out there around, types of assets that you should invest in as opposed to others. But I think investing in something, as long as it's the right thing, is better than not investing at all. And I guess what I'm referring to specifically are things like, buy a house with a large block of land that appreciates as opposed to a unit. 100% that is completely true. But if all I can afford is a unit, I'm not going to not get into the market because I'm still going to get a level of return, right? So buying that unit is better than doing nothing because it will still appreciate, albeit maybe at a slower rate than what the land will. But it's appreciating as opposed to the cash that you leave in your bank account will not be worth the same. It will not have the same buying power as it does today.
It's an entry point as well. And when it comes, from a business financing perspective,
yes.
If we see that someone owns a property, no matter how small it is or no matter how highly yielded it is, they automatically consider that as a lower risk borrower.
Yes.
Because they've got a mortgage, they can maintain the mortgage, they've
sense.
got an asset backing, that sort of stuff. George, I wanted to ask you one question that I ask all the guests that we have on the show. Mm-hmm. What was your fuck it moment that propelled you personally and professionally?
So I would say the corporate space and sort of, walking away from the corporate space sort of towards the end. So like most, I guess it's probably going to be sort of a familiar tale. It sort of kind of came at the apex of when sort of COVID hit. And ultimately, businesses, corporations make commercial decisions as opposed to what's best for their people. So I was put in a position where I guess asked to do certain things and I didn't like the outcome it had on a personal level for the individuals and completely appreciate sort of, corporate goals and objectives. But I also feel, you should treat people a certain way. And that was kind of my, fuck it moment. I thought, that's not how you do it. And that was the catalyst. So that was the line in the sand. That's where sort of the business came from. I sort of leaned into what I know personally. And that's sort of real estate, what I understand, what drives me. And it kind of aligns to my values, right? So I treat my clients very much sort of in the way that aligns to my values. So that was that moment for me.
It seems to be a common theme with most of the guests that we have, that they took the leap of faith from the corporate world to their own business. Now, it's not all fun and games. Of course, we know about businesses. What were your struggles?
In my personal business?
Yeah.
So especially sort of being a boutique business, I guess you're wearing multiple hats, right? And as sort of the business grows, I do want to sort of keep that boutique element to it because the feedback from the clients is that they like that personal touch. They like the white glove service, the concierge element of what we bring. The challenge has been ultimately sort of, day one, where do your opportunities come from? So, how do you... It's all well and good sort of having a business, but if it's not generating revenue, if it's not generating sales, then that's a problem. Yeah. So our challenge has been sort of being able to upskill across various different categories or skill sets very quickly.
Yeah. How long have you been in business now?
July 1 marked 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yes.
Fantastic. Now, with young businesses, of course, it comes with challenges as well. Has that ever sort of affected your personal life in any way?
No, not really. I mean, I get what you're saying. You sort of you go through the ups and downs, the peaks and troughs of a business in its infancy at that point, and it's hard not to be sort of emotionally vested, right? So because it's your business, it's your livelihood, and what have you. But I've tried to sort of build up sort of just some personal skill sets that allows me to sort of separate them as much as possible. Yeah.
How do you draw the line? Because a lot of people are finding it very difficult.
To draw the line. What I try and do is essentially sort of when I essentially walk away from work for the day or what have you, I have sort of a firm time boundary of time with the family, whether it's sort of the kids after school or between sort of dinner and bedtime, and just keep that sort of time technology free, phone free. All that stuff goes in another room. It's a bit sort of more challenging to turn off sort of the conversations in your headspace. But trying to just sort of be present in that moment. So for me, actively, like I know if I'm playing a board game with my youngest child, as opposed to sort of sitting across from him watching a TV show, then I'm going to be actually more engaged in that task with him. So that kind of stuff helps. It's more mindful.
I've got a lot to learn from you, because this is the one thing that I still struggle with, is switching off, especially with family time. And often I get a question from my 7-year-old son who goes, "Oh, do you still have to go back to work? Really?
Yeah.
Why are you always rushing?"
Absolutely. It's quite hard to juggle, right? And I by no means do I have it perfect, but it's something that we try and do. We're wearing multiple hats as business owners and parents. And at the end of the day, I think, talking to our young ones a little bit around sort of what we're doing, why we're doing, it kind of helps them sort of understand it. It's not about building an excuse, but it's also sort of just explaining to them the potential outcome or result of what you're doing later at night after they've gone to sleep.
Okay, from all these previous multiple ventures, what's the one lesson that you learned?
I think if you get sort of hit down or knocked down, you have to always get back up and you have to keep going. The only way you're going to learn anything is by making mistakes. It's very rare to come across someone who does everything perfectly from the very beginning. And if it seems that way on the outside, on the inside, it might be a slightly different story. I think there's definitely something sort of to learn about sort of being resilient, and every sort of step that you take where you are sort of getting knocked down, or I don't want to use the word failing, but I guess sort of learning or recalibrating, then the closer you're getting to sort of getting it right.
Okay, George, we're about to wrap up. I just want to ask one more question. Is there a quote that's stuck in your head, or a lesson that someone has taught you that you carry with you up until now?
Good question. Not so much a quote, but ultimately sort of a lesson for me in business is sort of trying to surround myself with people who are experts in what they're doing, and never assume sort of you are, you are the person that knows everything and knows it all. So for me, it's being able to sort of lean on others, whether they're sort of mentors or sort of specific, I guess, experts in their chosen fields. Because again, business is or can be a lonely road. But when you sort of pull in others to try and sort of help with some of that load, it certainly helps. So for me, I guess a big thing has been to be able to trust others and share with them my vision, my goal, and help me on my journey.
Yeah. How do you build trust with people?
I think sitting down with them and sort of, trying to understand values. Is there a bit of an alignment? And sometimes you sort of need to take the leap, right? So you kind of, for me, from a business perspective, communicate my values, what's important to me as an individual, what's important to me for my business, and what my clients value. And if it's a referral partner, for instance, just finding that they're on the same page. And sometimes you need to take a leap of faith and try. A lot of the time it works when your values are aligned. If it doesn't, it's having those open, honest relationships around what could be done a bit differently.
So you got to always take a risk, calculated risk.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sort of it's about sort of communicating your expectations, your client expectations. If it's received well, then you sort of progress to the next step. And hopefully build a relationship.
George, if you could leave the listeners, the audience, with one advice when it comes to purchasing a property, what would it be?
I think try not to get too defeated, I guess, by what we hear. There's a lot of sort of narrative around, things becoming more and more expensive, and that's obviously true. But if it's sort of constantly something that you're consuming through news or media or internet all the time, I think that really sort of erodes its way into your mindset, right, and becomes the norm. So I think try to carve your own path, formulate your own plan, and march to the beat of your own drum.
So just got to have a goal, basically.
You have to have a goal, and within that goal, you have sort of micro goals and review them. Whether it's sort of weekly, fortnightly. Personally, I track my goals and activities and milestones on something as simple as a spreadsheet. Review them once a week. Others I review fortnightly, and if I haven't taken any action towards achieving them, then I write down a micro step of what I need to do before close of business Friday to get closer. So it's about sort of incremental improvements.
That's so good. All right, George, thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Thanks for grazing our studio today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. It's good to finally be here.
Yeah, very insightful.
Thank you, David. Good to see you.